Yeah, PR is not a state. It's U.S. territory. But it's the new Detroit of the Caribbean. It ranked the highest in crime, the highest in drugs, the highest in unemployment. It's number one in government corruption. The schools are closing down. The hospitals are outdated. It's bankrupt. Overall, it's a bad place to live. If you're a tourist, you have a 50% chance you'll get mugged. Ah ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. What? My kind of place. Your kind of place. All right. What a performance. Greetings from Puerto Rico, everyone. Nick here with Kim. Say hi, Kim.
Hello, YouTube.
Kim and I were highly motivated. We came all the way from Miami to show you what life's like where our little stepbrother is at. Now it's mid-June right now. It's not as humid as I thought it would be. It's usually pretty bad here. It is not that yet. And the power hasn't gone out yet. That's a relief. I'll tell you more about that. Now behind me is Old San Juan. It's the historic part of this old strange land. We're going to explore it, and we're going to explore the entire island. And there goes a loud person. You get a lot of that here. That's Puerto Rico. We're going to talk about that and everything else. We're here for 17 straight days, and we're going to bring you life in Puerto Rico. How do these people live? How do they do it? Why do they do it? We're going to get to all of that. The Puerto Rico adventure begins right now, everyone. Come on! Here's one of the old refineries right here, next to a currently operating factory of some sort. So they got some stuff. Here's your ruin porn. I don't know if there's people in here. Hello? All the old paperwork, sugar orders. So this is what happens when companies leave. All the sugar mills were incentivized to be here, and it's just like anything else in this world. Stuff changes, and economic conditions and labor market and natural disasters, and people move on, and then you're left with this stuff. Welcome to Puerto Rico, everyone. We're in the USA. Kinda. So this is an old sugar mill in the southern city of Ponce. There's a lot of this here. You could say it's our fault. Prop up an industry, and when things change, well, it looks like this. We saw a lot of this when we were here. The reality of living in Puerto Rico. Now, before I get started on all the what's wrong with this place stuff, I do have to say we came to Puerto Rico with expectations that did not meet the reality that we experienced. In a good way. It wasn't as run down or dangerous as we had heard. And I like it when we go do a dispatch from a strange land and we're surprised by the good news. Puerto Rico is an island in the Caribbean. You knew that. It's not very big. It's about the same size as Connecticut. It's actually smaller than Los Angeles County. They say Puerto Rico has the best beaches in the USA. It has mountains and jungles and one big city, San Juan. That's where we are now. San Juan has 350,000 people. It's about the same size as Cleveland. So how did we get this strange, mysterious land anyways? Well, back before they had salsa and reggaeton here, this was really just a jungle island, and there were only just a few thousand Native American people called Taino that came over from Venezuela on a boat. That was about 1,500 years ago, and they were here for about 1,000 years and nobody ever knew they were here. And then, about 500 years ago, The Native American people were just sitting out here on that beach right there, just having a bonfire. And guess who showed up? Christopher Columbus himself pulled up right here into that harbor. Of course he did. And he said, "This is Spain's, this is ours. Y'all gotta go." And that was about 500 years ago.
And soon after, Ponce de Leon and the rest of the Spaniards took over the whole island. They cut a bunch of trees down and they put in a bunch of missions and forts. They ran Puerto Rico all the way up to 1898. And then America came over here and we blew the Spanish army away. And they left, quit, and went back to Europe. And that was the end of the Spanish-American War. And this became ours. And after 20 years of being in charge of the place, we made Puerto Ricans U.S. citizens. Yay! Welcome to America. But this isn't a state. We own it, but it's not really the same. It's a commonwealth. They're like the kid we adopted, but we make them sleep in the garage. They don't make their own decisions. They get all the privileges of being part of the United States, but they kind of don't want to be part of the U.S. anyway. I'll talk about that later. Puerto Rico doesn't have counties. It's made up of 78 little municipalities that are run by a mayor. And they have a governor here. The current governor, she's a Republican. Here's what she looks like. She loves Trump. More than half the island's Hispanic. You knew that. It's about a third white, and it's about 7% black. Mostly descendants from Africans that were brought over here as slaves back when we still did that. They have a very distinct culture that they're proud of. Very distinct. They have a strong connection to Spain and Africa and to the Caribbean. Most people here identify as Puerto Rican, not as Americans.
So this is Ponce, Puerto Rico. It's the second biggest city here. And behind me is the Cathedral Nuestra Senora de Guadalupe. It's been here since 1670. It's a Spanish Catholic church that survived hurricanes and earthquakes and fires, and it's a really big deal here. Now you're probably wondering, what are the laws like here, Nick? Is Puerto Rico like the US? Well, it's pretty much the same. The laws are almost the same. The driving is terrible here. You can Google it, but it's like this. So they serve in our military and we protect them. They're American citizens here and they use the US dollar. It's kind of like just being in the United States, except pretty much everybody here speaks Spanish and the place is kind of beat up in a charming Caribbean way.
Okay, so now that we have some of the background, we can get to the drama part. Your favorite part. Puerto Rico was booming in the 1900s. From the end of World War II until probably about 1990s, Puerto Rico was living a way better life than the rest of Latin America. There were big banks here, tons of manufacturing, way less crime. There was a vision here. People wanted to work hard and make Puerto Rico great. Things were looking good in the 80s and 90s because we gave big companies these tax breaks to move here. So companies came over here and hired tens of thousands of people to work here, mostly in low-paying jobs. But there were a lot of jobs over here. But then Bill Clinton changed the law, so the tax incentives that made it lucrative for companies to come over here and work were eliminated. So a lot of companies left and they went back to the U.S. And crime went up and people got broke. And then they got on welfare. our welfare. And now Puerto Rico's very poor and very dependent on U.S. aid. Poorest state is Mississippi, and Puerto Rico is twice as poor as Mississippi. 40% of the population lives in poverty. It's like the entire city of Detroit. Imagine if you took the whole city of Detroit and filled Connecticut with it. And that's why people call this the Detroit of the Caribbean. Now let's get some perspective here. Yes, compared to the rest of the United States, Puerto Rico is very poor. But compared to other countries, Puerto Rico's GDP per capita is about the same as Greece. You can see it on that chart right there.
We've had a big migration of doctors and even nurses to the States for a long time now. And also we have a growing population of elderly folks who will be needing more medical attention, nursing attention. That's why, for example, I saw a chart of showing the salaries of what's the average salary of a nurse working in Puerto Rico versus one working in Mississippi. The average was in Puerto Rico around $35,000, in Mississippi 61,000. There was a period in the 90s where this whole area saw a lot of construction, new condos, new office buildings, highways became bigger, meaning that they added more lanes to at least help with traffic. As you can see, we still get traffic no matter how big we make our highways. Just to point out historically, in the 2010s, which was the last decade, that was a pretty bad decade because between
The hurricanes.
2006, when we officially lost the Section 936 tax benefits, and not until the late 2010s, maybe even 2020s, a lot more small businesses started to come back or started forming. So it was like a maybe 10, 15 year period that it also included the hurricane, where you would look at certain avenues, certain areas, certain places that used to be bustling with small businesses, dead, abandoned, nothing happening.
So, it's not wonderful here economically. Puerto Rico has economic depression, corruption, bankruptcy, a shrinking population, and really bad natural disasters. Kind of like back home in the mainland, right? Some will say that Puerto Rico gets screwed because we control them. They can't make their own laws. Some here will say, you guys set the place up to benefit you and reap the rewards. You guys don't care about the daily life of our struggles. Schools are in terrible condition. The teachers are paid crap over here. The internet says the public schools here are like third world Africa level. Those are your words, not mine. But on the other hand, Puerto Rico gets double the federal spending than what we give the average U.S. state.
So here's an example of an old school here that never reopened up here. There's a ton of schools closing all over. A lot of people just left and never came back. And that's a lot of barbed wire. I think it's gonna get worse and worse up here in the areas up here.
So Puerto Ricans cannot vote for president, but they do a symbolic vote just to see who they would vote for. I don't know what the point of it is. And in the last election, 75% of people here voted for Kamala. That's just crazy. The population's very liberal in their reliance on free money, but very conservative when it comes to religion and family values.
Word on the street is Puerto Ricans are very frustrated with the United States. I hear people say they want to be an independent country. They want to be part of Spain again. They don't want to be part of the U.S., or they do want to be part of the U.S., but it'll never happen. There's a lot of animosity.
Bueno,
Have we treated this island terribly? Is it justifiable that these people feel neglected, or are they?
So yes and no, right? Like it's people doing people things. If you're going to understand Puerto Rican politics, there's really three main political ideologies. You got folks that want to be a state, and they believe that We're already American citizens. We could just demand statehood. All right, cool. Makes sense. Some folks want to be an independent country. And again, they feel that they can do the same thing. They can just demand it of the United States. And then there's some folks in the middle to varying degrees. There's actually a couple of political parties there. And they believe that some sort of free association or commonwealth, which is known as El Estado Libre Asociado, ELA, to varying degrees, they want to either stay the way we are or they want to change it slightly, give us a little bit more authority or a little bit less authority, but fundamentally stay in the middle, right? And we get together every 4 years, and this frustrates me because we get together every 4 years to fight about which party is going to administer this colony, when we don't have the authority to make that decision for ourselves right now. The United States Congress has to make that decision. And if you think that the United States Congress is going to decide tomorrow to give us a go, you're probably sadly mistaken. I don't think we get there on the priorities list.
No.
So, and maybe this isn't a popular view, but I think we just do it ourselves. We just fix our own infrastructure. Stop worrying about federal funding. Stop worrying about what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do as a free associated state, and just start building communities from the ground up. You know, you've seen here where you have one house that's dilapidated right next to a house that looks pretty good. And I think that the difference is probably not that drastic. It's just people that are taking responsibility for everything in front of them. So yeah, people get together every 4 years for an election. They beat the crap out of each other over a decision they can't make. And that bothers me. That bothers me because I think we're only hurting ourselves.
So it's the Puerto Rico mismanagement, corruption, ineptitude. Like, what are the problems here that they can't solve their own problems? Because all I hear about is Puerto Rico's in a bad place, and they can't manage their own selves effectively, and they constantly rely on the United States for help, and then the U.S. doesn't give them enough help.
Well,
am I off on that?
No, you're in Barrio Obrero right now, and we've kind of demonstrated that it can be a nice place, right? This is very working class, but it's also very family class, right? So there's a couple of things. People keep harping up to the Jones Act. That's a law that passed a very long time ago. It's a protectionist law. I don't know what the good argument is for that law, but I know that as it exists today, it seems to cause some issues for sure. Especially like during Maria, we couldn't really get a lot of resources into the island. I think they suspended it for a couple of days in order to get some ships in, you know, because the whole island was flattened basically.
Yeah.
The power grid is busted up, and they privatized it. They gave it to a company called Luma, and there's been all sorts of issues. People pay more here for power than almost anywhere in the United States. I just paid my parents' power bill, and it was ridiculous. It was more than what I pay in a very large home somewhere else.
Like $500 a month?
A little bit more than that.
Damn. And it goes out all the time.
And it goes, I mean, yeah, and you're lucky if you have it, 3 out of 4 weeks of the month.
Ooh, look at that impressive building. Behind me is the capital of Puerto Rico, right there. It's where all of the big decisions and all the stuff is decided upon. Inside that building right there. There's a lot of people here that think they're making bad decisions inside of there. You may not know it, but the entire island filed for bankruptcy in 2017. They collect about $12 billion a year in taxes, and $3 billion a year goes to pensions. A lot of people say that Puerto Rico is mismanaged and corrupt, and the infrastructure is super bad. The power grid is terrible. A lot of people here can't even flush toilet paper because the plumbing is so bad. There's a lot of rights and wrongs that are happening here, and all of them are in that building back there. That's their White House. And you can just walk right up to it. That's cool. This is, I mean, come on, people. Really? This is, wow. Look at this trash back here. Oh my God, look at this mess. Why don't they clean this up? Here's an example of the power lines and the terrible infrastructure up here. I mean, this looks like it's about to fall over. The power lines are just going down into the water. They're literally going into a pond. I don't know where that goes.
Big part of the problem here, it's our own damn fault. Puerto Rico ranks in the bottom half for world governments. Well below Costa Rica and Chile. So we drove around here. We were here for 17 days. And you're going to see a lot of the stuff that we covered when we were here. A lot of what we saw was damage from hurricanes that came through here about 8 years ago and just really wrecked the place. A lot of people here didn't have power for an entire year. And a lot of this stuff is never going to recover. They're never going to rebuild it. There's no money. There's no plan. People just have kind of moved on. Some people here will say that we didn't do enough to help them after the hurricanes. Well, that's not true at all. We came and helped, and the money we gave them, a lot of it was wasted. Nobody even knows where it went.
Do you blame the United States for not supporting you guys more down here? Or because some people will say we give them plenty of money, they just don't spend it right, and then some people will say they don't give us enough money.
The money that is given is to keep people poor. It's not to move people to a middle class or a better future. It's to just remain in that situation. Just be happy you get fed and you have a roof. But they don't. Some of them come out of it. We live in a system that all the government does. Let me ask you, the last political campaign that we had for governor for 2024, the two main political parties at that time, their economic program for the island was which one could get more federal benefits. That's the economic program they had.
Why do they want to keep people poor down here?
Well, they
Hold it up here so I can do.
the people that believe in statehood, they think that if you have people depending on handout, they won't be against the United States. They will support the United States, and they do. They don't know anything about the United States. They don't know United States history. They don't know anything, really. But they're for statehood.
They want to be part of the United States because
they think that as full U.S. citizens, they will get more money. So Americans need to know that when these people go there asking for statehood, which they do every so often, that's what they want. And I say, this is between. The United States want people to be economically independent. They don't want people to be dependent on the federal government, and you want people to be dependent. So it's an oxymoron, it's a contradiction. So I don't really think that the leadership is really for statehood, because if they were, they would be promoting economic development.
Yeah. Well, they say 45% of the island lives in poverty, Puerto Rico. Why is that?
Well, until about a few years ago, unemployment here was never below 10%. Never. Not even in the glory days of the 60s. Never below 10%. And wages are small, and prices are high.
A buddy of mine told me there's no reason to move to Puerto Rico unless you already have family here or you want to take advantage of the tax laws. Now, the whole tax laws thing, there's going to be a whole video about that. But basically, a lot of people here are very upset because they incentivize rich people to come over here. If you move to Puerto Rico and you live here, you buy a house, you don't have to pay federal taxes. So if you pay 30% federal and you make, let's say, $1 million a year, you move to Puerto Rico and you don't pay anything. You save like $300,000. So a lot of people are moving over here. Puerto Ricans complain. They say it's changing the culture. And that's not fair, damn it. I guess it's hard to get a loan, and it's really expensive for things like power, food, but home prices, they're about the same. Might be a little bit cheaper in the rural areas, but the house prices out here are about the same as where you live back in the States. But they make way less money over here. And home prices, they're going up fast, which is making the local population poorer. That all has to do with all the investors and all the rich people coming over here to dodge taxes.
The population here has dropped by 12%. It's going down fast. A lot of the people are fleeing the island for better jobs, actual reliable power, and for our amazing public schools. They say by the end of the century, there's only going to be 1 million people here left. Most are just going to be rich people from the mainland who want to take advantage of the tax breaks. There's now more than twice as many Puerto Ricans that live in the mainland than actually live in Puerto Rico now. And the abandonment, so many areas we've seen in Puerto Rico that are near ghost towns. 30% of the houses on this island are either abandoned or not occupied. Can you imagine? Think about that. Unbelievable. They say the mortgage delinquency rate is 3 times higher here than back in the US. Man. So how do the Puerto Ricans feel about the USA? You know, they're cousins from another mother. Well, it's mixed here. Some people want Puerto Rico to be a 51st state. Some people want Puerto Rico to be an independent nation. Some people even want Puerto Rico to go back to being part of Spain. Can you believe that? They got a good thing going. Don't know why they want to ruin it, but some people here do. And look at that beautiful shot of Old San Juan.
So many Puerto Ricans here say, we like the way things are. We don't want to be part of the USA. You guys are treating us like a colony, you overlords. You gringos only love us for our body, not our minds. And then some people here feel like they need us. Without us, they'd be communist Cuba. But this will never be a state. That's because nobody knows how they're going to vote. Half the country will be like, look at the place. It's going to be another liberal crap hole. And then the other half will be like, Hispanics are very conservative. They're not going to vote blue.
The people who want statehood, meaning that they want to incorporate Puerto Rico as a 51st state, they argue that, for over 100 years, Puerto Ricans have fought in every major war since 1917, since we became citizens, that we made a lot of companies rich, one of them being Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, because of the manufacturing plants that settled here. And when we once used to make all the Viagra in the world. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, like I said, we fought a lot of wars, we made a lot of money for Americans, and also since consumerism in Puerto Rico is so high, a lot of the money that we make here ends up going to the States because of all the Walmarts or the Sam's Clubs, Costco's, all of the chain stores that settle here. It's like, give us finally the opportunity to become a state, because after all of we've done for you. And I think honestly it's a valid statement, but at the same time the US does not want to make us a state. It never has. Only 2 presidents in history have spoken in favor of statehood: George H.W. Bush and Gerald Ford. That's it.
Why don't they want to make this a state? I think it's because
we would become the first Hispanic state with direct voting power in Congress. That's one reason. The reasons now may be a little bit different. Now that we've essentially become more of a welfare state. A lot of people depend on government aid, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Section 8, and then a lot of different aids.
Yeah, man. Give me a quick take on Puerto Rico. How do Puerto Ricans feel about America, USA, back in the States?
It's a 50-50 kind of thing, you know. Some people are for becoming a state in the future. Others not so much. Others are set in their ways. They kind of like the way it is. And then, of course, the fear of the unknown of what might happen, what changes might come with those things. So it's 50-50. You got a bunch of people that like the idea of becoming a state one day, and a bunch of others that not so much. They'd rather keep it the way it is.
How do you feel about it?
I like it the way it is. And I'm a New Yorker. I was raised in New York City, but I kind of like it the way it is.
If you ask any Puerto Rican who has been alive since, let's say, the 80s and all the way before then, they will tell you that there was a lot more life all over the island. I mean, all over, not just San Juan, all over. People had their local town parties. They had their own communities. They were really, really proud of wherever they lived, wherever they came from. Now it's a different narrative. Now it's how do we survive the challenges of the time. So there are certain geographical points that really desperately need a jump start. And also, there's an elderly population that will soon need to make serious decisions about what they're going to do to survive in towns that are about to close down because of fiscal problems they're having. So it's a combination of neglect, bad administration, corruption, and essentially a lack of vision, a lack of consistency.
I also learned that there's not a big homeless druggie problem here, mostly because the family culture is looked down upon. You can't have your kid out there janking up and looking like crap because it brings shame onto the family. So when they see their family members out there struggling, they bring them in the house. Like, you can't be seen like that, which is good. They hold themselves accountable. I wish a lot of people here in the States held ourselves accountable. Get our family members and friends off the streets. But we ignore that.
You know, I know we Puerto Ricans complain a lot about the system, terrible government services, the crime, sure.
Potholes.
The potholes, the traffic. But San Juan, and then Puerto Rico in general, has a lot of stuff to do. It's generally clean. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff to do. And even though we complain, sometimes we overlook the good things that we have. This is a fun town. The weather is usually great, except when a hurricane comes over. And even though even me and other people might have mixed feelings about the island, it still has its good stuff, you know? And sometimes it's easy to overlook them because of all the other things happening. Inflation, lack of government services, all the things that I just mentioned.
But do Puerto Ricans really do they really deeply want to get back to where they were? Or is it kind of like a typical Hispanic attitude, like, oh, you know, today is today, not so worried about tomorrow?
Well, I don't know, man. I'm worried about tomorrow, and everybody I know is worried about tomorrow. You can't sit around here with rolling power outages. I can't keep running over here every couple of months because another family member needs a battery that they can't afford, but I can, so I'm gonna take care of them. So we're worried. We're very worried. But we have an infrastructure that is crumbling. I don't know where the investment would come from. If I was the United States, and this is a pretty brutal take. If I was the United States, I wouldn't spend money here, strictly from a fiscal standpoint, right? I want them to, but
because it's a money pit, it's a lost cause. Is that what you think?
I don't think it's a lost
or is that
cause.
what the U.S. Is that why they wouldn't spend money?
Exactly. From a fiscal standpoint, if I'm the U.S. Congress, I'm looking at my most poor territory. It's heavily indebted, and it has what, at the very least, appears to be a history of corruption. No, I think we can do this, but I think we should do it ourselves. I think we shouldn't rely on the United States because, again, if I was the United States, I wouldn't spend a lot of time here.
So are people pissed about the way Trump handled the Maria response? Because I hear that he threw out some toilet paper rolls and said, peace.
Exactly. At the very least, right, the most charitable view that I can give the U.S. president on that one, is that it was insensitive, right? Some folks have lost everything and they're in a line trying to get some suministros, some resources. And then you got some guy throwing them like a basketball thing, like just having fun. You know, at the very least, that was tone deaf. At the worst, that betrays a sense of disdain. So I don't know. I'm not in that man's heart. And the whole point I'm trying to make is that I don't care what's in that man's heart. I care about what we do together here as a community. And I'd like to see that because I think we can do it. I think we can turn this into the jewel that it once was. We used to be the biggest economy in Latin America. And if you think about that, if you think about the size of this country, and you're gonna tell me that it is the top economic power in Latam, like, that's a big deal. So there's definitely some industry here, and of course it fuels the internal industry. And you've probably seen, we went through a little park earlier today, and there was all these kioscos, just little businesses out of trucks. That's one way where Puerto Rico excels, where I have seen it in very few places. I've seen this in the Middle East though, where these little businesses just set up, and you know, are they authorized? Maybe they are, maybe they're not, I don't know. But they're making money, they're making a little bit of money, and they're getting by. So that gives me a lot of hope for the future, because the entrepreneurial spirit in the island is pretty powerful. And again, we just hit an intersection, there's two businesses. Let's wait until the next intersection. Okay, there's a dry cleaner, there's a kiosquito right here, there's a restaurant Iris. So commerce hasn't left us.
I just have to say, though, again, I'm very impressed with how clean and just well run. I mean, there's a little bit of whatever. I mean, every city has it. I don't see any bums. I don't see any junkies running around. I don't feel unsafe. It's clean. It's just nice down here. And a lot of downtowns are not nice. Nobody here is going to be happy about what I say in this series. I could come here and I could say, the place is a mess. And Puerto Ricans will be like, well, then go home, gringo. Who are you to come here and talk crap? This is your fault anyway. You guys made us like this. We were fine before you came. Or I can come here and say, Puerto Rico's wonderful. And Puerto Ricans would say, stop saying that. We don't want more gringos coming over here and ruining everything. I guess I'll never win.
The brain drain worries me, man. Like, because that's gonna stop fueling things like this, right? When folks get an education, they just leave. Why? Because I can start making $14 an hour doing what I just educated myself to do. Or, and hear me out, I can go to Florida, to Orlando, and make 3 times as much with my level of education. Okay, well, you combine that with the fact that prices are inflated here for a variety of reasons. You know, I think we import 80% of our food. I mean, that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. We got to figure something out. But I remember when I was a kid, they were saying that we were going to have 4 million people on this island. We don't even have 2 now. So we've lost, I believe, is like a third of the population. And it hasn't been to disease, it's been to better opportunities somewhere else. So we're doing something wrong, and I'd love to figure out what it is, and I'd love to fix it, and we're gonna try. But I imagine it will take time, effort, patience, kindness, and a little selflessness. That's right. Yes, sir.
And cut.